All right, welcome to the March 3rd, 2011 meeting of the Milton Planning Board. I'm Alex Whiteside, the chairman, and with me, why don't people introduce themselves, starting there.
Bernie Lynch, member.
Peter Jackson, member.
Member. Bill Clark, planning director.
We're waiting for Emily Innes, who will be
In school.
Slightly delayed, should be here before the
It
first
used to
public
be
hearing.
when Dr. Dolan was on the board, he would be
Surgery.
in surgery
Yeah.
whenever he was late. But we will let Mrs. Innes speak for herself now.
The secretary's not here.
The minutes, are they ready to go, Bill?
No.
Okay, the minutes are not ready to go. So we will defer the minutes until the next week's meeting.
I thought they were ready, but okay.
I gave some changes to Bill today,
Oh, okay, okay.
and Pete gave some changes to Diane a week ago. Bill,
Yes,
so they all have to be,
yes, and I just
all right.
haven't had the time.
Okay, now, Mr. Duffy, you are going to, before we go on to citizen speak, you'd like to say something briefly.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and my fellow colleagues. I am announcing now that I will not be a candidate for the Board of Selectmen in the upcoming election. I have most sincere gratitude to all who signed my nomination papers and who encouraged me and supported me now and in the past. The work of our planning board does not abate, and I am certain that the Selectmen's agenda is likewise. And I am still recovering from some ailments that restrict my activities. So for these and other reasons, I will not be a candidate. I wish all other various candidates well, and I remind them that our beautiful town requires constant dedication. Thank you all. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, our next meeting is next week, 6:30.
10th.
The location will be announced. Probably in the Carol Blute conference room. That's what usually happens when we have a problem finding a place to meet. What do you think, Bill? Is it likely to be the Carol Blute conference room?
Yes,
Just as I thought.
yes, Carol Blue Conference Room on the 10th, yes,
Okay.
and on the 24th.
And on the 24th, all right. Now, citizens speak. Are there any citizens who would like to speak? And if so, we want you to come up to that table and address the microphone. All right. There are no citizens the citizens are reserving comment until later in the evening, I have a feeling. Now, Mr. Clark, we're ready to have your report.
You are. Been dealing with issues of the wind project on permitting, dealing with issues with the East Milton parking study. There was a Business and Citizen Advisory Committee meeting last night, and there is another one on the 13th of April. I've been dealing with issues, dealing with the Green Communities grant, paperwork for it, dealing with the logistics of the East Milton Library RFP, dealing with the Governor Stoughton Trust, dealing with issues of their RFP and RFQ for an appraisal for the selectmen, leading the site walk and tours for the site per the RFP. Mr. Duffy and I just came from a wireless telecommunications design review committee. And then just dealing with the planning board issues, 131, 36 Central on materials change, getting them ready for their amended special permit. the subdivision issues dealing with 683, 685. And as I just passed out to you tonight, it was delivered to me about 4:30, an appeal on the 216 Pleasant Street subdivision.
An appeal.
An appeal. Now, I'm sure that
Mr. Gordon,
I'm sure that I'm missing something, but
no,
that was
the
close enough.
Puffs.
Oh,
Who are the
This is,
Puffs?
Puffs of the next door neighbor, they moved
Deputy
into a
sheriff or
Bonnie
a
house
constable?
Really?
to the left of it.
Oh, deputy sheriff or a constable?
No, it was hand-delivered to Mr. Mullen, and it was issued to the court, it was hand-delivered to the court too.
Oh, Town of Milton is named too. No, Town of Milton planning with them.
Planning board,
Well, we are the,
they're appealing the planning board decision.
well, that's remarkable. But that's what courts are for,
That's right.
without people suing
And citizen
other
speak,
people.
they can come to citizen
They
speak.
could
too.
come to citizen speak rather than going to court, and it would be free.
Right.
All right. Now, we have a interesting issue, which I will outline for you. As people may know, Heather Drive originally was constructed as a bit longer than it currently is, and it had to be pulled back from some wetlands. And as a consequence, one of the lots, the end lot on the right in Heather Drive, no longer had 150 feet of frontage because the road they couldn't put the road in as far as they wanted to because there were wetlands there. So the lot became an unbuildable lot. But the owner of the lot petitioned the Board of Appeals for a variance to be able to build on a lot which had insufficient frontage. And they pointed out that the road had been brought back and that the lot had always been intended to be a lot, and the Board of Appeals granted them a variance about a year ago. And in the variance, the Board of Appeals said construction on this lot shall comply with all laws and regulations governing the erection of structures in Milton. And the variance decision advises the building commissioner to issue no building permit hereunder which does not comply with all the provisions of law. And thereafter, the owner sold to a new owner who now want to build a house 40 feet tall with 3.5 stories. And the reason they want it so high is that I think this is the case, there's a high water table, so they want to build their basement 9 feet above grade, above average grade, and then put a house on top of that, reaching up 40 feet. And it seems to me that where you have a substandard lot such as this, and you have the Board of Appeals ordering them to work within the zoning initially, they're coming back and saying they want a house higher than any other house built in Milton with an extra story, one more story than any other house built in Milton, that this is not desirable. And if, simply because I think part of the reason maybe they want their first story to be high enough so they can see the golf course. But if that's the case, maybe they should put their living quarters on the first story and have their, you know, their dining room, living room on the second story. I mean, it isn't that they need a basement rising 9 feet above grade. It seems to me that that first story should be used for either sleeping or living quarters, but should not be a reason to ask for an extra story or for extra height. I think that if the Board of Appeals were to grant this variance, there's no specific reason stated in the variance application other than the fact that there are constraints. And one constraint is that most of the lot is wetlands. And I mean, there are lots of lots in town which are mostly wetlands. And the fact that they've got a substandard lot doesn't really mean that they should be able to disregard the zoning. They should work within it like the Board of Appeals ordered initially.
Well, the Wetlands Protection Act too, there would be in violation of that. Can the Board of Appeals give them relief from that Wetlands Protection Act?
The original owner got them, had a plan for a house
I
that
think
met,
he's passed away.
he sold it.
I
Mr. Walsh? I think that's the father who, I think
Okay.
that's the father. Is that right?
Father passed away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the son now, I mean, the idea was that he was going to live next to his,
He sold the two lots that got combined into one. He still owns the house next door.
oh, okay. So, I think that this application derogates from the intent and purpose of the zoning. And to get a variance, there's a specific requirement that it not derogate from the intent and purpose of the zoning. I think that this would be a precedent which would be extremely mischievous, in that if, just because someone wants extra height or an extra story, they could get it. Then I think that everyone might, or a lot of people might try and do so. And if there's no cause meeting the requirements of the zoning, which says that there has to be something particular about the lot, which is not applicable to other similar lots in the area, but something specifically applicable to a lot that makes application of the zoning a hardship, then a variance can be considered. But asking someone to build a house no more than 35 feet tall with no more than 2.5 stories, just like every other homeowner in Milton who has tried to build a house, doesn't seem to me to be a huge hardship. And I think that this is a good case for the planning board to advise the Board of Appeals that we feel that this application is not a desirable one. So I have drafted a letter, and not only have I drafted a letter, but I made a signature copy. Completely prepared. If the board wanted to do something. So let's discuss it.
Do we have a copy of the plans at the time that they submitted to the Board of Appeals? Or their statement of what the hardship is or anything?
They didn't make a statement of a hardship, did they, Bill?
But isn't that the basis of going to the Board of Appeals?
The relief, yeah.
What the Board of Appeals procedure is that they just make a general statement that there are reasons, but they don't disclose the reasons until they get to the hearing. And I don't know if they disclosed any reasons this last time, but because I wasn't able to go.
Just like unspecified damages when you go to court with the judge.
Most
Give you
people
the
think
bucks.
that an application, that the public should be able to go in, look at the application and determine the hardship from the application and not have to go to the hearing to have, to be told what the hardship, if any, is. But that's another story.
Well, I for one think building the house that high above grade is, is aesthetically not very desirable. And then the additional height that they're asking for, I just don't think it's, the kind of house that we want, and it certainly doesn't meet our zoning, and I agree with you that it would set a precedent that all of a sudden everybody'd think they were entitled to a house of that mass. So I think the idea of us writing to the Board of Appeals and suggesting that we don't think it's in the town's best interest would be a good idea.
And how do they get around the Wetlands Protection Act?
Well, the wetlands, they've put the house on the very side of the lot. Most of the, I mean, it's on a hill going down, and then there are wetlands. They're putting it sort of on the side of the hill, and now they want to go up 40 feet.
But it's certainly in the buffer zone.
It's one,
Is that
not in-
septic up there? I think that's septic. I don't think that's sewerage. So what's the septic system? I think. Yes, it is septic.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I
I've been
forget, but I
home.
do know that when the house was originally put together, between what they had to go through for conservation and for planning, the house was shoehorned into a specific spot. The entire property is within the 100-foot buffer zone, so they did file for a notice of intent for the property. There is a demarcation on the plan for the 25-foot zone of non-disturbance, and the house is just forward of that 25-foot line. But it's because of not being able to move past that 25-foot line, and because of the way it was squeezed into, or squeezed between the existing easement. There's a drainage easement in there, and they actually asked the DPW director for permission to move the easement at their expense, and it was granted by the selectmen and by the DPW director to move it to the right so that they had a little more room, and it took it away from the corner of the house. They literally were building a corner of the house over that existing drainage.
Sounds great.
I read your letter. I thought it was very clear. I think the fact that they haven't given a specific, I mean, the Board of Appeals exists to grant a variance with proof of hardship. They've offered no proof of hardship. It is against the zoning that, as you say, applies to everyone else in town. There's nothing specific to this lot that would require a variance. I agree.
Other discussion? Okay,
Motion?
a motion to send this letter to the Board of Appeals?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, why don't we pass it around and sign it? I made it so that we all can sign it.
Bond paper and everything.
This, actually, this stationery I had made because I was dissatisfied with some stationery that was, I'd had this made about 20 years ago.
Well, it's good.
But I haven't had occasion to use it all.
We can send more letters.
So I'm thrilled to be able to,
Alex, I'm doing the same thing. That's why a lot of your copying is being done on the backside of the old letterhead, which is why you've got the good
what do you
stationery.
think of that seal, Pete? Pretty nice, huh?
Beautiful. Did you get permission from Mr. Duffy to use this?
No, the planning board.
You gotta go to the selectmen.
We're the planning board. We get to use the seal. All right, now, we are, I talked to Bill about our zoning issue. The zoning issue is that a notice was published in alternate weeks rather than consecutive weeks. And so there's a defect. And I think the way to fix it is simply to recommend that the article be amended to include the article that was advertised in alternate weeks. So we'll do that at our hearing.
Okay. And which has been scheduled for the 24th?
Is that for the 24th?
No, that was going to be my follow-up question to your comment. When do you want it?
24th?
24th.
Well, actually, next week would be great, but we don't have
Can
the
we-
time to do it, so the
We
24th.
can do it
better
at
advertise it right
two
this time.
consecutive weeks, the latest one being no more than 7 days, no less than 7 days before the hearing?
10 and 17, I can make the 24th.
Okay,
Excellent.
let's do it then.
That's good.
So we can get it to the warrant committee so that they can include the amended article in their recommendation.
And if you have that draft language, I'm sure they would appreciate it sooner rather than
I
later.
will, I bet that they will, and I will do that.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
today's Times had a public notice about this defect, and I didn't read through carefully enough to understand what they were saying, because it seemed that they were offering a remedy short of holding new hearings.
Well, they said they're not going to disapprove it, but they basically said that anyone who gets
Is
aggrieved probably are going to have a fairly easy time of overturning
Right.
it.
So we might as well get it cleaned up.
So there's no point in not cleaning it up.
Yeah, and we need a hearing for the town meeting anyway, so.
Exactly right. Okay, now it's 7 o'clock. No, it's not 7 o'clock. It is 7 o'clock. All right.
7.
What?
7.
Okay, I was looking for my agenda again, so that, lend me your agenda, would you, Bernie? Thank you. This is the special permanent site plan review of the continued hearing. This has to do with 131 Elliott Street, the Hendry's site, and in particular, the oak tree. And I've asked Mr. Jackson to give us a brief update on what's happened since our last meeting, as far as correspondence is concerned.
Here's a good copy.
Thanks. Got it somewhere.
The planning board has received 29 emails.
At least.
Well, I counted 29. I tried to save them, but there might be more. They continue to come in, all of which are in support of trying to preserve the tree as part of this project. We didn't receive any emails suggesting that we not save the tree to the planning board as a whole. I received a personal email from someone who suggested that they didn't feel that the tree, saving the tree, should hold up making progress on the redevelopment. But that email was not sent to the full board, so it was not really submitted, but that's that. The reasons people gave in support of keeping the tree, I thought there were a lot of, very interesting comments and things like that. So I just highlighted just a couple. The Milton Outdoor Classrooms commented that the tree at the Hendry's plant is a valuable piece of the interconnected web of life in our local environment and part of our outdoor learning lab for children. We urge that you protect it for future generations. There's Sustainable Milton commented as a group, and they said that we are very concerned about the preservation of this tree for several reasons, but principally due to the positive environmental benefits, clean air, which it provides in a high-traffic location where there are few trees, as well as the historical nature of this specimen, which is over 200 years old. There are many, many comments similar to that, and very articulate comments. I won't read them all. Here's
You can read a sampling.
couple more?
Yeah, I would do that, and I think that it might be nice to know who all these emails are from.
I didn't make a list of all the people who sent emails.
They're all email names today, I think.
Yeah, well, but I didn't copy all of them here, but
They should be on file at town
Janet
hall.
McNeil commented for Milton Outdoor Classrooms. Alan Lappy, MD, commented that this is a living, thriving entity. It is a survivor. The thought of its sacrifice to satisfy commercial interests is short-sighted and horribly discouraging. The Sustainable Milton email was written by Sarah Mills. Several others. Nancy Latanzio writes, we need town officials to provide leadership on conservation issues and to shepherd the balance between much-needed development and preserving of things that make Milton such a great place to live. This seems like a great opportunity to do both, save the tree. Here from Diane D'Souza said, I wonder if it's possible for us to encourage the developer to reach a compromise which will yield a unique and beautiful property, avoid the negative publicity and protest which is brewing, and help preserve a useful landmark which enriches our town. Like I say, there were 29 of them, so there are quite a few. Here's one from Barbara Finney. It says, there will be 2 very large buildings in a small area, and this tree will help save history, space, habitat, environment, and the fleeting and disappearing attractiveness of this corner of the square. So again, I don't know how many we want to hear, but they were all in that bent, and the reasons for saving it were often environmental. They were aesthetic, relating to the character of the square and softening the space, and also because of its historic nature. Those are kind of the
I think that it's fair to say from these emails that the will of the public, 29 emails is quite a remarkable number.
It's more than we normally get.
Many more than normal, and all consistent. It seems to me that we can determine a will in the public to preserve this tree. And what we're doing at this hearing is we have a suggestion that the tree is not preservable. We've had an arborist, we've hired an arborist, a qualified arborist, who has given an opinion that the tree is in fact a very healthy tree and is preservable, even though there is a significant amount of deadwood which needs to be tended to. But he made the point that even this winter with all the snow, the deadwood was not breaking off the tree. It was hanging on, indicating to this arborist health. So tonight we scheduled actually the 3rd in order to prevent the developer to bring his arborist to address the board. And we will hear from the developer.
Just while you're setting up, Bill, these will all be printed out and kept on file at town hall if anybody wants to access them, all of the letters? Okay, great, thank you.
And they will be made a part of this hearing record. And they are a part of the hearing record. Okay. Welcome, introduce yourself and...
My name is Stephen Connolly. I am the applicant for 131 Elliott Street. I had notified Bill Clark that my arborist would not be available until the end of March. I'm sure he forwarded that along to you. And what I have tonight is a prepared statement that I'd like to read into the record and submit to the board.
Well, you may do so.
Thank you. Town of Milton Planning Board, special permit for 131 Elliott Street, March 3rd, 2011. We are requesting that Planning Board member Peter Jackson recuse himself from the Planning Board special permit application process for 131 Elliott Street, otherwise known as the Henry's Plant. We are requesting his removal on three main premises. A, refusal to implement the zoning bylaw regarding FAR bonus according to the language and the intent of the bylaw approved by town meeting in 2007. B, a conflict of interest in his role as planning board member reviewing this development application for special permit approval while being a member of the permitting team for the competing development at 2 Adams Street, Milton, a development which has not broken ground on its new building. C, in our opinion, Mr. Jackson has acted with unclean hands in implementing the RFP for the oak tree, an RFP process which the board entrusted him to execute in a fair and judicious manner. So now, about the bylaw, Section A, zoning bylaw FAR bonus. If the I'm going to quote what the bylaw is. If the planning board determines that the area of the lot in the business district is the same as the qualifying lot area, and that a development will preserve, if feasible, or replace in kind, one or more significant natural features on the site, and provide significant amenities to the public, the planning board may permit a bonus of higher FAR not to exceed 15% for the higher FAR. With this bonus, the total FAR for the building, exclusive of parking structures in areas solely for parking, shall not exceed 1.725 times the area of the lot in the business district, unquote. At no time was the health of the tree a determining factor in this bylaw when it was adopted in 2007. The language and intent of the bylaw puts the weight and priority with the design of the building. If feasible, the tree stays. If not, the town has a clawback mechanism in place to get compensation for the FAR bonus. Mr. Jackson is quoted in a Boston Globe article dated February 24th, 2011 by Johanna Seltz. He states, the choice is really his. He can decide to take the tree down and build a 15% smaller building, or work the tree into the design for the building and still qualify for the bonus. And I have a copy of that article and an email correspondence from Johanna Seltz that the quote is accurate. This is a blatant disregard and misuse of the bylaw. Again, health was not a determining factor. It was predicated on design. Mr. Jackson has continuously disregarded any opinion that considers development for the site. This view directly contradicts the language and the intent of the bylaw. The original Article 8 of the warrant for town meeting held November 5th of 2007 put the premium in the weight of obtaining an FAR bonus on maintaining the tree as a natural feature. The amended article that was approved at town meeting and endorsed by Mr. Jackson and this planning board put the premium in weight on the design of the building. We argued for, and you agreed to, the change because we informed the board that because of the location of the tree, it would have to be removed for a successful build-out of the site. B, conflict of interest. Mr. Jackson is a member of the permitting team for 2 Adams Street. He is also a member of the Milton Planning Board, which has special permit authority for this application. There is an inherent conflict of interest where Mr. Jackson has worked for the permitting of one development and then sits on the approval board for the permitting of another development that is in direct competition with it. It's within a 5-minute walk. The 2 Adams Street development has not broken ground for its new building and has not sold the units in the existing mill buildings. It is a development that has not been fully implemented. Mr. Jackson's refusal to allow an FAR bonus with the current design, along with his position for the board to impose the maximum amount of commercial space it can under this bylaw, around 8,300 square feet, without discussion or review, effectively kills the viability of this application and, in turn, benefits the 2 Adam Street development because it will not have to compete in a marketplace with a 34-plus unit condominium building in the near future. According to my information, Mr. Jackson recused himself from the planning board's special permit process regarding 2 Adam Street, and he should be consistent and do the same for this application. We are not in any way implicating the ownership or development team of 2 Adam Street with any type of wrongdoing regarding our process. This is strictly focused on Mr. Jackson. RFP for the oak tree. The Milton Planning Board entrusted Mr. Jackson with the task of generating a bidders list for the RFP on the oak tree. On the list Mr. Jackson produced, he had Large S Forestry from Jamestown, Rhode Island. When the Planning Board was asked why a company from Rhode Island was on the list, Mr. Jackson remained silent. Mr. Jackson also fought vigorously to have multiple tree companies respond disqualified, although the RFP language did not require him to do so. The only bidder that was left was Large S Forestry. At the meeting before Large S Forestry was to present their report, which was January 27th, Mr. Jackson specifically asked if our arborist was going to be present for the report. It was stated that it would depend on the results of Large S Forestry's report. We were assured by this board that we would have the report on time before the meeting so that we could schedule our expert to be there to rebut the findings if necessary. We never received the report until the night of the meeting. Large S Forestry had nearly a month to do the study, and upon request before the meeting date, refused to produce a copy to the applicant for review. Hence, at the meeting, Mr. Largess had the floor to himself with no rebuttal. Subsequently, for the past 3 weeks, this development proposal has been met with negative media attention and an email campaign to the Milton Planning Board to save the oak tree in order to try to influence planning board members. Mr. Jackson stated at numerous meetings and in media outlets that all he wanted was an independent and objective analysis of the tree. It turns out that Largess Forestry is active with the Friends of Blue Hills group, and Mr. Largess knows environmentalist Tom Palmer. Mr. Palmer provided the pictures of the tree to the website 02186 My Town Matters back in early November of 2010. Mr. Jackson is also very involved with the Friends of Blue Hills group and knows Mr. Palmer through this group and from serving on the Neponset River Watershed Association board in the past. In my opinion, Mr. Jackson knew that Mr. Largess would produce a favorable report to save the oak tree because of his background and reputation. Mr. Jackson intentionally kept this information away from both the applicant and fellow board members. In my opinion, the report was deliberately delayed so that Mr. Largess would not encounter a rebuttal at the presentation from our arborist. Mr. Jackson has acted with unclean hands regarding the RFP, in my opinion. In summary, Mr. Jackson to date, with this special permit process, has failed to apply the bylaw in an accurate, fair, and equitable manner. He has a serious conflict of interest issue and is jeopardizing the integrity of the Town of Milton Planning Board by remaining involved with this process. Finally, with the RFP process, Mr. Jackson's conduct has been unbecoming of a Town of Milton elected official, in my opinion. He should, at a minimum, recuse himself from the special permit approval process for 131 Elliott Street. Respectfully, Stephen Conway. Now, along with my letter, I have exhibits. I have the copy of the, as I stated before, I have the copy of the article. I also have, from Peter Jackson's website, I have a 2-page, the residents of Milton Village. It's under his current project section, and it has this development to Adam Street, along with all the extensive permitting that he helped out with for that site. And again, that site hasn't been executed on. It's a current development. They're having trouble with sales down there. I want to come online with my development. There's an inherent, it's obvious, there's an inherent conflict here. I want to move forward. I want to do this job. I've showed up to every meeting. I want to have a fair, equitable, and accurate by the way, an accurate interpretation of the bylaw on my application. That's all I'm asking. And I want Mr. Jackson recused, so we can move forward. Thank you.
Okay, now you're going to provide Mr. Clark with your letter.
I have copies.
Okay. Why don't you,
Chairman, I'd like to respond.
let me just say a couple of things. And you can, you'll get a chance. It seems to me, my reading of the zoning is that it says, if the planning board determines that the area of the lot in the business district is the same as the qualifying lot area, which we have determined, it is the same, and if they determine that a development will preserve, if feasible, or replace in kind one or more significant natural features on the site and provide significant amenities to the public, the planning board may permit a bonus for a higher FAR not to exceed 15%. Now, the way I read this is that the development has to preserve, if feasible, one or more significant natural features on the site in order to get the bonus. And if it's not feasible to preserve it, then the development has to replace in kind the natural feature. So what I assume we've been doing is trying to determine whether or not preserving the tree is feasible. And there are two prongs to this issue. And one prong is, it's been suggested that the tree is old and rotten and unsafe and likely to die soon, and that it can't be preserved because of its condition. That's number one. And then number two is that they cannot do a development on that site which would preserve the tree. But, you know, we haven't really ever heard this second prong addressed, and given the fact that the current ice cream factory is significantly bigger than the building they're proposing, I just wonder whether or not they can show that they cannot design a project for the site which cannot preserve. There's no design, no reasonable design available which would preserve the tree. And so that's the way I look at the zoning. Not that the design you've come up with won't preserve the tree. We know that. It's this building right in the middle of it.
But that wasn't the discussion at town meeting in '07, Alex. The reason that the bylaw language was changed is because we informed the board that there is not a viable building to be put on that site, given the restrictions that are in that bylaw. And we can certainly get into them to produce a quality development on the site. Now, that's why the board endorsed the change to enable the developer to justify removing the tree predicated on design. Now, what has happened in this process, I have been disenfranchised from this in the sense that the first discussion, which I've been trying to put forward here, but nobody has wanted to engage me in it, talk about the design, establish if the tree can be maintained. My position is that it can't, and I think we can, as a group, put a good argument forward why it can't. Then, if the board was agreeable to that, then you get into, well, what is the value of that tree for the town for replacing kind? And that's where the health of the tree is an issue, because it establishes value. However, but what happens now is, it's presented out there, and I get like 29 emails and articles in the paper and everything else. This is a healthy tree, and this guy wants to cut it down. That's what the presentation is. Rather than justify it by design, the building has to go that direction. It is a lot in the business district. The business district is designated by the town of Milton for development. That's what takes precedence down there. So if we could get the board with us on that, then when you get to the health of the tree and that the tree has to come out, we're not getting emails. And we're not getting negative publicity, because before this issue, not one person has sat there and has argued against this development. Nothing. It's all caused by Mr. Jackson. He's been the catalyst.
I would suggest that
You know?
I said that the development facing the tracks looked like a prison. So
did.
that was not actually a very positive thing to say.
I'm talking about public comment. And people have, and naturally, with any design review process, there's gonna be adjustments to the design of the
But-
building with
but
finishes and everything else,
Bear
Mr.
in mind
Whiteside.
that we have been, remember how we've been walking through this step by step, and we said you don't have enough commercial area. Hold your comments public until we figure these things out, and then we'll get into the design. But then the tree came up, and we never really got into the design of your building, because I certainly have some significant issues with it.
I'm sure you do.
Yeah, and I mean, I would have to go back to my notes from November 2007. I don't remember it off the top of my head, but looking simply at the language that was passed and is now in the zoning, it does require that you, the developer, will preserve, if feasible, or replace in kind. My understanding of this process is we are finding out whether or not it is in fact feasible to preserve the tree. And if not, then we would talk about what in kind is. The only thing I'd add to Alex's prongs is I'd add a third one, which you have never actually, sorry, not just you, but we as a board with you have never discussed. He said condition, he said location relative to the building. We've also not yet discussed the cost of preserving the tree.
Mhm.
And that's something that would have to factor into the feasibility question.
Mhm.
So, you know, again, it's something that we need as part of the information that we would use to discuss the feasibility and then to discuss for the design elements. I agree with Alex, we haven't even started into the design of the building
I
yet.
understand that, but that's where the discussion is supposed to be from the beginning. This process has been delayed since November 4th and predicated on the wrong premise. This thing is supposed to be about design.
This
That's
says
what it is.
preserve, if feasible, the tree.
Has nothing to do with the health of the tree. I just.
The health of the tree would add to the feasibility of preserving it.
You can say that, but
It's
there
not the-
are,
it's not
there
what was
are
voted on, you know?
reasonable people can disagree with you, and there are two reasonable people on this board, at least, who do disagree
Mm-hmm.
with you.
Well, I'm going by the bylaw that was passed at town meeting. That's
And
what
so
my.
are we. I mean, that's the problem, is
Well,
we are
I-
all looking at the same language. You're coming up with one interpretation,
I
we're
mean,
coming up with the other.
you feel certain that you're right, and
I believe so, and I'm sure you think you are too. you know.
I can,
It's fine.
I can actually tell that.
Yeah.
But now I think what we're going to do is, having given Mr. Jackson a little time to collect his thoughts, Pete, the floor is yours.
Well, I'm not prepared, having just heard this for the first time, to really respond in detail, which I will. But I think this is an outrageous, untrue, personal attack on my integrity and my actions on this board, and there's no foundation in any of those things that you said. I am not going to go deep, line by line through it now, but I will, and I think it reflects poorly on you that you would resort to a personal as a character assassination.
There's nothing
as a
personal
way
about
to-
this.
Oh, absolutely.
This is all, this all has to do with, this all has to do with this process. And as a
And the
public
process-
official, you're
excuse
supposed to
me, sir,
conduct
I've got the
yourself.
floor.
You're supposed to
Please sit
conduct
up.
yourself
Okay,
right.
but
Will
you,
you
let him
Listen
speak.
to what I have to say, and then if you want to respond, you can. So this is an outrageous way of trying to sway something without any grounds. There's no grounds in any of these statements that you're saying, and I will respond in detail to them. I've conducted myself professionally throughout this whole process, and I will continue to conduct myself. There is absolutely no basis for me to recuse myself. There was a basis and to recuse myself at 2 Adams Street, because I was directly involved on that team before I became a member of the planning board. But there is no conflict with me on this project. I, as much as anybody in this room, including you, want to see this project, a good project built on that site. I've been working for many, many years to get a good project on that site. And I will continue to work to get an outstanding project for the town of Milton on that site. And I will be responding to your diatribe.
No, my own feeling on the two Adams being involved, I might add that I am a friend of the Blue Hills, as well as a member of the Neponset River Watershed Association. And
recuse yourself?
don't.
Dropping like flies.
And you know, if we both recuse ourselves, that is going to put them at a severe disadvantage because they need 4 votes to get this thing passed. The rule of necessity might,
One of you could invoke the rule of necessity, yes.
you know, possibly.
Yeah.
In any event, I don't think that's a reason. I think that Mr. Palmer taking a picture of the tree was very useful. It's having that picture speaks 1,000 words. As far as 2 Adams Street being in competition, and that by having been involved in the permitting process for 2 Adams Street and possibly still being involved in the landscaping work there, I just don't see it's a conflict. I mean, there are developers who build all over the place, and if working for one developer disqualifies you from being a public official, I don't think so. I'm quite sure that you're wrong there, and as far as Mr. Maltby, why don't you explain about Mr. Maltby, Emily?
The problem with Mr. Maltby is he didn't respond to the RFP. That's why he was disqualified. So the RFP asked that they respond to certain criteria, and neither one of the 2 letters received by the board actually responded by that criteria. That's why he was disqualified. Had he responded to the criteria in the way that the RFP requested it, he absolutely would have been considered. And the fact that we were left with 1 is because only 2 people responded to the RFP.
I'm not saying that you didn't have the right to disqualify him. What I'm saying is that the language wasn't there to specifically disqualify him if he didn't respond properly. Typically in RFP documents, that language is there. And that language, it was a very general document to get some bids on a development. There were only 2 there. If there were 3 or 4, you know, maybe a little more reasonable to say that we're not going to accept this. Well, when there's 2, and then you isolate largest forestry, I think that's a problem.
I respond to RFPs on a regular basis for my the company I work for. I
Sure.
can't imagine not responding to an RFP in the manner in which it was requested. That's why you do an RFP. You ask for specific information.
I understand that.
Maltby was excluded from the discussion because he did not do that. Again, I would have been delighted to look at him or any other ones that responded properly, but he didn't. So that's the basis. And as I recall, I made that argument, not Pete. So I think he joined in, but.
Pete, you and Pete were very involved together with this.
We both
Peter was very
received-
involved.
We both
Yeah.
received the RFP simultaneously at the meeting, as did all the others. He
I
didn't
understand.
respond to it.
I just,
And it looked-
my position is in this, and take time and read it. and-
It looked like a good RFP to me, and we sent it out. And I think that we played by the rules, and it ended up that Largesse, a qualified bidder, was the only qualified bidder, but that's no reason not to accept their bid. It was a proper procurement, and
The only other choice would have been to resubmit the bid.
to redo
And
it,
that would
right?
have, you know,
Dragged
you're
it.
worried about things dragging out, we're worried about things dragging out. That's the only other possibility, was to resubmit it. So,
And it didn't, with a qualified bid, it didn't seem,
Reasonable,
it didn't seem reasonable to reject all the bids,
right.
or reject the bid.
The sole bid that actually qualified according to the requirements of the RFP, yes.
Right. You,
Since Pete obviously wants time to review the written documents and respond, perhaps we should move on to something else?
well, I think that, I think actually we'll continue.
Oh, you've got further.
I think that what we'll do is we've got an 8 o'clock hearing schedule. And what we will discuss, I think, is the fact that we are now getting a statement that a development cannot be designed,
Right.
a reasonable development cannot be designed with the tree preserved.
Right.
And that is an issue which we've got to look into, and we may need to hire an expert. Well, it would be nice if, I mean, I was looking at 17 Central Avenue and Mr. Lovely,
Right. The massive
with all
studies.
the architects in town, it seems to me that if we get a consensus, maybe John Zigowitz can give us a little help here. But we need to look at this thing and be comfortable that there is no possible reasonable design. And we're not talking unreasonable designs.
Right.
We're talking about financially feasible, reasonable designs capable of preserving the tree.
Right.
And we have never looked at that.
We did talk briefly with the architect about, what other studies he might have done. And at the time, we were sort of going over a lot of issues, so we didn't really deal with it in depth. And that might be something to do, again, is to have a chat with the architect and see what other possibilities he looked at.
Bill's just passing this out, and there's a copy for Steve also. This is the
Would you-
revitalization committee's comments on the proposal as they reviewed it. Yeah.
That's right. I remember seeing this last summer.
And I don't know if we've gotten those previously. or not.
Yeah, we did. But it's been a
These
while.
are dated July 19th, and it seems to me that we're going to, with the amount of water that's flowed past this development since then, we're going to, well, and also, given this, what I consider a new issue, which is that the development itself precludes saving the tree.
Just to clarify, Steve, that is your statement, is that there is no possible way to cite the
A
development.
proper build-out of that site. tree has to go.
Okay. I just want to make sure that now
No,
we're
that's
working
what it
from a
is.
premise where we all agree
Yeah.
this is what we're looking
All
at.
right, I think that's,
Fair enough, right?
that's,
May I-
yes.
So that means that we are either asking the developer to have his architects look at options, or we're gonna hire an architect to look at the feasibility of options that save the tree?
We're going
Is that
to,
what's being
now that we know that this is an issue, we're going to,
Well, first of all, we need to ask the Connolly's architect whether or not he looked at options that would preserve the tree. And if so, why did he
I guess
discard
that would
them?
be a
So that
good-
would be a first start. is
a good
did
way
he-
of doing it.
Did what options did you look at? Why did you say, okay, this one won't work and that one won't work? That way we have a basis for making the decision on. Then I think your idea of asking John Zigowitz and maybe the revitalization committee to have a look and let us know what they thought of the idea would be helpful as well.
well, it's sort of like doing a competition for the Boston City Hall.
We could do a charrette.
And get, ideas for how should this site be best developed.
Well, one very quick question I would have of his architect is looking at this area here. Why not take that? Not that you can see what I'm looking at, but basically it's the entry area with the tower, which is directly under the tree. Why not take that and shift it over? Has that been looked at? Because that alone, And, you know, part of the answer is going to be, well, you lose the tower at that point. And I know the Central Avenue Revitalization Committee was very interested in the tower. So the question is, you know, did they look at that option and what did they think of it and why did they like the tower and so forth and so on. So what I'm saying is we just need to have some more discussion with your architect and with the Central Avenue Revitalization Committee. So, you know, if the issue is it can't be preserved because of the design, then we need to delve further into the design.
And it does seem to me that if you want to bring your arborist in at the end of the month to convince us, to try and convince us, make your best effort to convince us that the tree is unsafe and unhealthy and can't survive, then we certainly will hear the arborist, because if we were to conclude that the tree is in fact unsafe and unhealthy and unlikely to survive, then the fact that the development gets rid of it is probably not critical.
And at any rate, he should have the right to have his arborist respond to Mr.
Well,
Lachance.
exactly.
Yes, so.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
We've been asking Mr. Connolly to bring his arborist before us for at least 4 or 5 months now, and he hasn't done so. I think in terms of saving the tree, is it feasible to save the tree? From a health point of view, it is, you know, it has been shown to us by our arborist and their lack of response that it is feasible to save the tree. The tree is healthy enough and it can be saved and preserved. If we find that, then I think the charge is for he and his architect to design a building on the site, you know, starting with site massing. I mean, it's not a small thing. It's not to ask the revitalization committee, you know, can the tower be moved? It's to design a building on the site that preserves the tree, and that's not, you know, it's not a small task. So I would think that the planning board should make a statement, take a vote, do whatever to find that it is, from the health of the tree standpoint, it's feasible to have it there. And I would expect that the next thing would be to start looking at some massing studies or something to find out how a development can fit on the site with the tree there.
I agree absolutely that if we determine that the tree is healthy enough to be saved, and I'm certainly hoping to hear from people here tonight to see what their opinions are and how they feel about it. But if we determine that's healthy enough to be saved, he absolutely has to redesign. I agree. My only question now is why haven't, you know, the statement has been made by Mr. Connolly that there's no possible way to put a building on that site. I just want to see the underlying rationale for that.
But
You know,
that's a big project for an architect.
well, no,
That's
just to have
not
the
some
architect
idea.
come
Mr.
in
Chairman.
and tell us what he's looked at already.
Well, I think we'll find out
Yeah,
how,
if he's
Mr.
looked at
Chairman?
the
Yeah.
massing
we'll
study.
find out how big a project it is, yes.
The lack of response from our arborist, this first became an issue on November 4th, was the first discussion at all about the tree. We didn't get the report until I believe it was February 10th. So there's your lack of response. And when I called my arborist, the guy's on
We're-
vacation. It's the way it is. You know?
What-
So
what
to
we're
say
going-
that
what we're going to
to say
do-
that we're blocking
we're
bringing in an
going to-
arborist is, again,
We're going to
the
allow
wrong
you to
thing,
bring in
huh?
your arborist, and we're going to hear your arborist, because the more information we get, the better. We were
Yeah, absolutely.
hoping that your arborist would come in tonight. But, you know, it's your development, but we have done our best to keep this process moving, and I have to admit that I think that you are one of the principal reasons why it's going so slowly, because you resist what I think have been reasonable requests from the board. But we look forward to working with you
What have
in
I
a cooperative way.
what have I resisted?
Well, you remember, you've resisted coming in to talk to the board before we even started this hearing process. We said, come in and please talk with the board because we have things we'd like to talk to you about this development. And you said, no, I don't want to talk to the board. I want to submit my plans and do the talking at the hearing. And I think that you made a big mistake in not talking with us before you submitted your proposal. And now that you've submitted it, you say, well, I've gone to all this work to submit it. You talked to us, maybe you wouldn't have, but as I say, we're going to do the best we can to move this along. And we look forward to seeing your arborist on the 24th.
I'm not sure, I have to confirm.
He's on vacation. He
I
can't
don't
come
know.
when he's on vacation.
All right.
It's just cruel.
Okay, that's fine.
Excuse me, Mr. Jim, what arborist are you bringing in?
George Atkinson was the consulting arborist for that tree.
Was he the only one that commented on the condition of the tree? It seems to me there was another arborist.
Well, Malpe Company was a response to the RFP issued by the board. That was the second opinion, and when the board
Was that
chose,
favorable?
no, it was unfavorable. The second letter that he sent, he reconsidered his first letter and said that the tree should be removed.
His first letter was
Atkinson
favorable.
said the same
second one
thing?
was not,
Atkinson said the same thing. Now, Malpe Tree Company, I called them after the board chose largest forestry, and I put the letterhead into our name so that we could submit it as a second opinion.
Right.
Is that right?
So do you wish to bring them both?
No, I think
Okay.
Mr. Atkinson is the consulting arborist.
Okay. Just checking.
We're prepared to hear them. But right now, we're going to hear from any member of the public. I think that we've gone as far as we're going to go with you
Tonight.
tonight.
I agree.
And who wants to be heard on this? Yes. Come up and sit down and introduce yourself and
Ann Thompson doesn't have to be introduced.
introduce yourself for the viewing audience.
Ann Thompson, I never thought I would be here tonight, but when I look back to when Pete Jackson announced his candidacy, and I read his background, and I thought, aren't we lucky to have someone with that talent ready to donate, not be paid, you people are not paid, to donate all his hours and time to the planning board with this wonderful background that he has. So I just had to get up and say that.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
Margaret Donovan, 41 Central Avenue. I have a question for Mr. Jackson, and I have a question for Mr. Conley. I hope he's still here, and then I'd like to make a statement.
He's in the hallway.
Mr. Jackson, you quoted from some of the 29 emails that you said you got in support of the tree. What was the email address? Because I was unaware of it, or I might have sent you an email too.
Planning board.
To the planning board, email to the planning board. What were the addresses of the people who sent the emails? I think that is significant, because if they lived in Milton, a mile away, it's nice to drive by and see that beautiful oak tree. If you are in a abutter looking at that horrible building with the big red X in there, it's not such a pleasant event to have to deal with the oak tree.
But wouldn't you say that's true with the people driving by it? I mean, I drive by it and I think it's an eyesore.
The building,
Yeah,
absolutely.
okay.
Previous,
No, I mean, you don't have to be an abutter to think it's an eyesore. It is an eyesore.
right, except that for the abutters, it is a dangerous building with a big red X on it, which means that no firefighter can go inside that building. There is no way of knowing, even though Mr. Conley referred to the heads at one meeting, that those heads are going to work if there is a fire there. This board did not read into the minutes, nor do I believe did the Board of Selectmen read into the minutes the letter from the former fire chief who talked about that building and, no pun intended, the conflagration that could happen.
We would be thrilled if Mr. Conley tore that building down. We would be thrilled.
I'm sure that Mr. Conley does not want to go through the expense of tearing the building down without a permit to put another building up there. But I think it's reaching the point where, as you know from that house on School Street, that something has to be done. That building may have to come down, may have to be torn down, because we have been coming here since July for this permit. That's 8 months. We might as well be here for the next 8 years, because that's what it took for 36 Central Avenue to finally get off the ground. I remember coming to the meetings in 2002. Construction did not begin until 2010. Are we going to spend 8 years talking about a tree while the rest of us worry about whether or not there's going to be a huge fire there at some point in time? Because it certainly is an attractive nuisance. Mr. Conley, you all speak in very low voices. I don't think I heard you say why your arborist is not here at this meeting. I would like to know why your arborist is not here. As a matter of fact, I was going to go out and get 2 toy pistols for the duel that was supposed to take place tonight. Why isn't your arborist here?
My arborist is unavailable until the end of March. And when we submitted that letter back in July, and this became an issue on November 4th, within 4 months have gone past. And, you know, the guy has other things, he's away, whatever the story is, there was plenty of time that this could have happened. But the RFP didn't go out, the response didn't come back, it's been delayed. And when the arborist is available, I'll bring him in.
He must be world-renowned if he's so busy that he can't come on a Thursday night for an hour or so to give your side of the story.
You can ask him when he's here.
I think
I think that one thing that you assume, which I don't think is necessarily the case, if we rush through this permit just because we think that somehow it's going to make the building come down earlier, I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think that if it's a good development, likely to receive financing, you will see the building removed sooner than if we rush through the process. And as I tried to explain to Mr. Connolly, the planning board really does feel that he is at fault here for much of the delay. And that's how we feel. And we're not going to rush through this process because we think that a thorough, reasoned process is going to make for a better result, and I think the town will be happier. And we all want the building to come down as soon as possible.
Yes, I'm not saying that I'm asking the planning board to rush through the process, but to spend 8 months on a tree is a little bit tedious, shall we say.
Well, the tree is 202 years old, and I think 8 months in its lifespan is probably just a small glimpse.
Yeah.
So,
All right. To the members of the planning board, I hope that when you finally finish with the design, with the permit, that you're going to have a much better looking building than what this board approved that went up, is going up at number 36 Central Avenue, the monstrosity. Thank you so much.
well, who else would like to be heard? Yes. Introduce yourself for the hundreds of thousands of viewers.
My name is Joe Sloan. I live at 55 Concord Avenue. First off, I wanted to say thank you for not just accepting public comment, but inviting and welcoming public comment. I am a firm believer that public participation is a key part of the process, and especially in this process. And I want to encourage the planning board to, in fact, move with haste to make that determination that was suggested a few minutes ago, that in fact, that it is feasible to keep this tree, because I think that is key, and I think that will help move the project forward. I think that's key. I'm not a traffic engineer, but I have some good insights about traffic in my neighborhood and in town. I'm not an arborist, but to me, this is a healthy tree. Everything that I heard,
Maybe you should hold that up for the TV camera. Could you zero in on that picture? Thanks.
it's unfortunate that the recent discussion about the tree is happening over the winter, because as I drive around Milton and throughout greater Boston at this time of year, I think if we were to be determining the health of trees by what they look like in the winter months, we would probably be cutting down most of the trees in Milton. And it's unfortunate that this picture, which I think was taken maybe last summer, maybe late spring and during the summer, it's unfortunate that the tree doesn't look like this right in the heart of the conversation, because it might be a little bit easier for the average person to understand what the arborist who came before the planning board said. I heard a lot of science in that presentation. He seemed like a very energetic and wound-up person, but at the same time, the report had a lot of science in it, and I think that it's good to kind of stick to that data. I've planted a bunch of trees around town in Milton. A few years ago, I helped our church, the East Congregational Church, get a grant from the Department of Conservation and Recreation to, in fact, plant 22 trees along Thatcher Street. You might remember there used to be some absolutely majestic trees along Thatcher Street that some of them were in poor health, but others had to be taken down when the street was redesigned, was reconstructed. Every time I drive down Thatcher Street, I look at those trees, and sometimes I walk by them and check on the trees. They're all doing great, but it's going to be generations before they come anywhere close to the majesty and the canopy that was along Thatcher Street before. People have talked about how old this oak tree is, the technicalities of planting trees to replace trees. It will be a long time before the small trees that we plant ever get to be big trees. I am reminded that there are many examples of buildings in eastern Massachusetts that there's a courthouse in central Mass that was featured in the architecture section of the Boston Globe that in fact was built around a majestic tree. Even just a short walk away from the Hendry site, there's a large white oak that the DCR built around when they were right across the street from the Hendry's plant. The DCR built the beginnings of their pathway around a white oak tree. Just around the corner on River Street, at the schoolhouse housing project that was the residences that were built at the schoolhouse building. That building was set back a little bit to preserve a large beech tree that sits right on that property. So I think that this would be very much in keeping with what other groups, other folks have proposed in that very neighborhood. I think that again, I think that it would be to everyone's benefit for the planning board to make that determination on the health and the feasibility of the tree right as soon as possible, to be able to assist the process as it goes forward. Thank you.
Now, I would like to observe that Mr. Conley has seen fit to leave the room, and the public hearing is obviously for the benefit of the board, but it is also for the benefit of the developer, and I don't think that his absence advances the process at all, and I feel that I should note that. And Bill, you can tell them to look at the tape.
Okay.
Yes.
My name is Steve O'Donnell, 65 Hills View Road. And I'm kind of here tonight in two capacities. Came as one, I'm speaking as two. First, I'm chairman of the Milton Historical Commission. And the Milton Historical Commission would like to go on record as fully supporting the preservation of the 200-year-old black oak tree situated on the Henry's property. This tree, in its own way, is just as historic as any similarly aged building would be. It has stood there through many generations and many iterations of this district, and can, with proper care, continue to sway over the revitalization of the Central Avenue area and be of benefit and enjoyment to many more generations. We hope that the developer will modify his plans in order to allow the preservation of this important specimen tree in its own little corner of green in this densely built area. Now, speaking as a private citizen, I laud the board on their careful consideration of projects that come before them. It's one of the reasons why the town is a great place to live and why it looks the way it does. Milton is a great place to build. Developers love to come in, and they come, and they build, and they go. They want to make a profit, and certainly they should. They're businessmen. But we are left with what they leave us. And it's this board that pretty much stands between what they want and what benefits us. I'm not an architect. I see no reason why a building couldn't be designed around that tree, just as other buildings have been designed around other trees. We depend on this board to prevent the citizens. Don't rush, do it right. Thank you.
Yes.
Hi, my name is Nancy Latanzio. I'm one of the 29 emailers, and I also want to thank the board for your careful consideration of this issue. I'm here both as a resident of Milton and on behalf of the Amateur Gardeners of Milton, which I am a member of, and our club has sent a letter in support of advocating that I don't want to say saving the tree, I want to say incorporating the tree into the development of the site. I wish Mr. Connolly was here. I'm very disappointed that he's left the room. I feel that it's somewhat disrespectful. And I wish that he would try to embrace the idea that including the tree in the project can actually make a better project. I brought this historic photo, which I'm sure many of you have seen, of the old Hendry's site with the tree in the picture. The branching structure of the tree looks very much the same in this picture as it does today. It's a beautiful tree. You can see that this is a happy site here. I don't think it would take that much talent to come up with a plan that would make this a true amenity for the neighborhood. Two other things. I wanted to underscore what Mr. Sloan said about the replaceability of the tree, replanting new trees. If the tree isn't savable, I think that is really admirable, but there is no true in-kind replacement for a 200-year-old landmark tree. No new tree is going to convey the sense of continuity in history that tree does. I am disappointed that it's taken this long in the process for the tree to come up as part of the plan, and I haven't followed the whole process. I don't know why that is, but it seems to me that speaks to the need. I think it would be great if the town could come up with some kind of tree protection statute, the way Brookline and Wellesley have, so that developers would know from the get-go that they have to take care of the trees here and not have it be this disappointing, bitter thing that it seems to be turning into. Again, I thank you for your consideration and the opportunity to address you.
Great, thanks, yes.
Elise Brink, 30 Canton Avenue. When I heard about the tree, which was last summer, I encouraged Tom Palmer to take a picture of it, and that's the picture that you see. I didn't do anything about trying to save the tree until very recently when I realized that it was in jeopardy. So I decided to get a petition, sort of old-fashioned approach. And before I knew it, people were getting in touch with me to try to help. So I'd like to give you the 144 signatures that we all collected. And thank you very much.
Would you give it to Mr. Clark?
Sure.
And Bill, we want Mr. Conley to receive a copy of that. Yes.
My name is Louis Piero. I live at 105 Fuller's Lane. First, let me thank the board for doing a wonderful job. If Mr. Conley thinks that by attacking Peter Jackson and attacking the Friends of the Blue Hills, he's going to get anywhere in Milton, he's going to have to give up. If you think that 29 emails is a lot after that, wait till you see how many you're going to get now. I would like to...
Clark.
Yes. I would like to say that on behalf of Sustainable Milton, of which I'm a member, that a tree like this is saving our planet by reducing the carbon dioxide that we all put in as we drive by. And we cannot take it down for no reason. In addition to that, in terms of the historic age of the tree, Edward Duffy will tell you that it's almost as old as Suffolk Resolves itself. We live in a historic town, and we need to preserve what is historic within it. Certainly we need to develop, but we can do both. Thank you.
Fred Brink, 30 Canton Avenue. And obviously I'm here to promote the feasibility of the tree. A couple of misconceptions. This tree, I heard Mr. Largess's presentation, and I was in conversation with an arborist and a horticulturist in another context recently, and we started talking about champion trees, and surprisingly she gave the exact unsolicited advice as to what you do in cases of champion trees. This is a champion tree. She said quickly, 200 is a champion tree. You heard it all from Mr. Largess. You carefully prune the tree branches, you carefully prune the roots to slightly larger than the crown, you protect it before construction, you do this. And she said it's done all the time. And I want to say, if it's done all the time, it has to be done here in Tree City, USA, Milton, because this is where we have to do it. All the things that he said rang true to her when I told her what he said. So it's not that he's out there alone with two other arborists competing with him. It's common knowledge that this can be done and should be done and is done when people care about their trees. And I care about this tree. I don't live next to it, but I notice it, I like it, and it's part of Milton's tree stock. We have to do it. Just to reiterate, for those who haven't heard his report, oaks love living on ledge. This is ledge. Oaks are the toughest trees you can put in anywhere. They last forever. This tree is a tough tree. It's 75% healthy at 200 years. That's a lot more than we can say for a lot of us. It needs pruning. It needs trimming. It needs care. But it's been through hurricanes we don't remember. It's been through the roads that have been moved closer to it. And from everything I can tell, this tree is not affected by that. The sidewalks are new. That's not affecting this tree. This tree has its own yard, a big yard that it lives in, and it's done very well there. I like to think that this tree could be around for the argument with a board, 5 boards from now, when they're trying to replace this building that he wants to build. And somebody's going to be arguing for this tree then, 100 years from now. I think that's how important this tree is.
But his building's going to be a landmark.
Okay? That's basically it, that you must challenge the premise that a reasonable development cannot be designed with the tree preserved.
We are going to look at that very carefully.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, now it would be, yes, please come introduce yourself for the, as I said, hundreds of thousands of viewers.
It's nice that there are all these microphones, but they certainly aren't working.
They're for the hundreds of thousands of viewers.
Yes, all right, that's nice. My name is Marjorie Jeffries, and I am an advocate of trees. I saw what happened in Bristol, Rhode Island, when people got enthusiastic and decided they wanted to have wider parking. So they cut down in that time, that was a long time ago, they cut down all the elms. The tree was, the road was suddenly nothing. It was absolutely barren, and nobody wanted to go there. It makes a huge difference, but I think that this particular tree, in its location, I came to Milton in 1953, and I can remember when people were sitting under the tree, and it changes the whole concept of that area. And I know the DPW has been working very hard to put in trees, and they've done a noble job, but none of them are that size and that shape. That tree makes the difference for Central Avenue. And if it is kept with a suitable underneath it, around it, the way it is placed now, that could be the place where people could congregate, people could meet. There is no place that you can sit outside. The Radio Cafe has done its best and has put chairs outside, but they don't have very much of a place to put any chairs, and it gets very hot and it's very noisy on that corner because people are stopping and going on the corner. But so that area would change. It just does change the whole of Central Avenue, and to have it go and to just have a building, a blank building there, is really going to change it. So I would urge you to keep the tree. Now, in the library, we went overboard trying to keep our tree, and I think everybody appreciated it, and I hope it's going to live. Beeches are not the same as oaks. Oaks really are tough trees. Beeches can get very old and can split off and do all kinds of things. Now, our beech has survived so far, but it's had a miserable time because of the driveway that had to be put in. We did all we could, and so far it's living. I think the oak has a much better chance, and I think there should be, without changing its roots, because if you keep a little yard around it, a little plaza around it, then it will be just fine. And I really urge, for the sake of that area, you're all trying to make business in Milton, but a business is more than just a store or just a front or just a sidewalk. A business needs to have places where people can come and be comfortable, and that tree certainly provides it. So keep it from the point of view of making Central Avenue a place where people want to go. You're all exerting yourself. Everybody's exerting themselves to make it something like that. The tree really is key. Thank you.
Okay, I want to move on to the next order of business. We have not finished discussing the tree. Now, we have to continue this hearing and it would be convenient if Mr. Conley were here to discuss with us when we should. Shall we continue it till next week, Bill?
Okay.
March 10th, okay. What
I
time?
thought you said the 24th. He was gonna bring his arborist.
Well, I was just thinking that we could then determine when to continue it to again. Well, let's continue it to the, he's not gonna be here on the 20, he's not gonna be here on the 10th either. Continue it till the 24th.
What time?
We'll do it at 7 o'clock.
7? Okay.
But we probably won't see the arborist.
We might. He did say end of March. I don't know if that means, within a week of the end or the precise end.
All right, in any event, we want to give him a chance to produce his arborist.
Early or late?
What?
Early or late?
7?
7.
7.
And if his arborist is unavailable, perhaps he could bring his architect in.
Right, he
We can have
could
a
bring
wee
his
chat about
architect
that.
in, we could have a little architectural discussion. Maybe you could find out early, and we'll put on our agenda. We'll make a notice as to whether or not we're going to discuss trees or architecture, or both.
Perfect.
Okay,
Mr. Chairman?
yes.
I mean, it seems to me, not to harp on this, but we've given him multiple opportunities and actually specifically requested his arborist at numerous meetings, and then he gets here and doesn't have the arborist. At some point, we've got, and we last time told him that this was the last chance. In fact, we scheduled a meeting on a week that wasn't our usual week, specifically because he said that this is when he'd bring his arborist. I mean, at some point, we've got to say this is the last chance, and I would like to make the 24th kind of the last chance. If he doesn't produce his arborist, I think we have to move forward.
Well, I would say that if we're going to say redesign your building or forget it, that is a decision that we want as much information as possible on. It's his development, it's his property, it's although some people think the oak tree is a public asset, it actually belongs to him. I want to give him every possible opportunity to convince us of what he has to say. Because if we're going to say the building has to be redesigned, and I do think that when you said in the Globe that if he doesn't want the bonus, then he can remove the tree. My feeling is that even if he didn't have the bonus, the board has the opportunity to say that they want the tree preserved anyhow.
We can do that under site plan review? as
We can
opposed to
do
special
that
permit?
under the special permit says that the project has to be in the public interest. And I think that we have,
So you define the tree in the public interest and.
I think that it is possible that even if he were to say, I don't want the bonus, but I want to get rid of the tree, that we would have to look at that very carefully. And if he were here now,
We could tell him that.
we could tell him that.
Fair
But
enough.
maybe he'll want to look at the tape film. And in any event, we can tell him next time on the 24th.
All right, so.
Yes.
Just one comment. The 24th, we're meeting in the Carol Blute basement conference room.
You're thinking we might have too many people.
No, up to this point, we can't go live from there, but I'm looking at Mike Lynch. Did I hear you say that you were in touch with Comcast, they were gonna do something, Tommy? Okay, so it
But
won't, so it'll be taped.
This is,
It'll be taped.
this building is unavailable?
The 24th is scheduled for the Carol Blue Conference.
Is this room available?
I don't know.
Why don't you find out, because if it is, let's do it here.
Because we can't, up to this point, go live from the Carol Blute.
All right.
Plus, I'm concerned that there may be a lot more people that can fit in the Carol Blue conference room if
I
this
will ask.
continues to be controversial.
I will ask.
Fabulous.
What I want to make sure I ask Mr. Conley is if his arborist cannot attend, can the architect attend to discuss the building
Design,
design?
yeah.
And then, once he responds to you, we'll put it on our website saying the topic will be.
Okay.
architecture, horticulture,
Or both.
or both?
Silviculture. Silviculture.
Or that.
Okay.
The next item is the 17 Canton Avenue site plan review. So why don't we hear from the proponent of the 17 Canton Avenue site plan review?
Good evening.
Continue, proceed. Introduce yourself and the people with you, and then tell us why you're here, and then make a presentation.
Excellent. I'm Attorney Bob Sheffield. I represent the Soccer Law Group, who purchased the building at 17 Canton Avenue, and they propose to remodel and enlarge the property. We are here for site plan review. We had a very productive meeting 2 weeks ago, and since then we've gone back to the drawing board based on the input at the board here and also the input from neighbors. I think I can report that we met again last night with the neighbors. We presented new layout and plans. I think it was, we're working very well with the neighbors, and I think we have a concurrence on the direction that we need to go. And we are going to retain the existing facade on Canton Avenue. We are moving the building further north to keep it from the neighbors, or as far as possible from the neighbors. We're not going to construct the addition on the edge of the building where we had planned to before. We're going to provide landscaping that will be attractive to the building and not be a detriment to the neighbors. And with me is Bill Christopher from Christopher Ropes Associates Architects, and he will show the preliminary. It still needs to be worked out further and further refined, but I think that we are moving in a direction that will be acceptable to the board, acceptable to the neighbors, acceptable to the town, acceptable to the Historic Commission. And I hope that we're successful in that regard. And with that, I'll give you Bill Christopher.
Thank you, Bob. And to concur what Bob says, we've been working, and to that end, we've not submitted drawings to you as you've requested from us, because at this point, we haven't got the drawings to the level and point that is acceptable to the neighbors, so we're holding back a little bit on that. To that, though, I'll show you here. Last night we had another meeting that was very productive. We took the building in a much needed different direction. What we're looking at here is a revised site plan, and this includes some of the elements from last night. The elevations that I'm going to show you have not been edited since last night's meeting, just due to time. But essentially what we're doing is, the existing building is shown here in the white, and then the addition to the footprint is here in the gray area. And what we've done is we've actually pulled the building back away from the abutters property line, and we've kind of snuggled it in more to the existing building. We've reworked the parking lot. At our previous presentation to you, there was an issue regarding the buffer in the back here. We've reworked the buffer, we've reworked some of the parking, and the thing that we're most happy with is we've reworked the building. As I said, this is the working meeting last night. We have a lot of fun with markers at our meetings. What I'm illustrating here is, this is a combination of the new building and the existing building. The existing building profile is highlighted in the yellow, with the balance of the building being detailed the way that we hope to construct it. As Bob had said, the elevation on Canton Ave will remain essentially the same. Any rebuilding that we do is going to be a direct result of termites and damage to the building that'll have to be removed and stabilized. Mr. Lovely has been very good working with us in terms of geometries and scales. We've taken a lot of his advice, incorporated into the drawing. So the building now very much has the character of a typical New England house that has been added to over the years. So that, you know, this being the primary existing house and our addition marching down with different roof orientations. The pitch we're trying to keep at a 12 and 12. We are still working on the height of this roof. We may change the pitch to drop this down a little bit more. And as everyone knows, this type of an elevation is really not a true representation of the building because no one ever sees it as a flat building. You see corners and edges. Our presentation, our final presentation, you will have a three-dimensional image so that you can really see how we've highlighted and detailed it. And not to take a lot of time tonight because I know you have many things on your agenda, but we just wanted to update you that we are moving in a good direction. I think, you know, some of the neighbors will say that, you know, we have been productive in trying to get a more refined building that's acceptable to the community.
And I think this process shows that the planning board actually can move right along given the right circumstances.
If we stay out of the design, right?
Yes.
Could I just ask, have you considered filling some of your space needs on the third floor as opposed to an expansion footprint?
No, the height on the existing third floor is not really rendered to be habitable. We are introducing a Lula lift to the building so that we can have full accessibility to the first and second floors. If we went to the third floor, we would have to get a waiver from the MAAB for the Lula lift. We would probably have the stretcher code that we'd have to deal with, which would mean a full-blown elevator. So to answer your question, yes, we have looked at it. We don't think it's practical, and that this extension is the way to solve our programmatic
Because of the
needs.
elevator accessibility problem, okay. I think it's moving in a good direction. I mean, this is much better than the first presentation, and if you can get the form of the building right and then come in and talk to us about some materials, it'll be great.
Well, we're going to, we think that the neighborhood is a good surrogate, and that if they're happy, we're likely to be happy. So, continue to work with them, make them happy.
Yeoman's task, but we're up to it.
Chocolate chip cookies help.
Does anyone want to be heard? We're going to continue the hearing, obviously, but Mr. Lovely?
George Lovely, 29 Canton Ave. I just want to reiterate what you were told, which was we've had a couple of meetings with the lawyer, the architect, and the developer, and we were pretty pleased last night to see that they listened to the things we had to say. They've been responsive to the issues that we raised, and we agree that the project's moving in a direction we'd like to see. And while there are a lot of questions certainly that remain, particularly about landscaping, and still some questions about exactly how the building winds up being massed, the materials, those things hopefully will be further developed next time you see them. And we'll continue working with the team to come up with something that we can ultimately support.
We're thinking the 24th at 8.
I think the next meeting after that would probably be preferable. By that time, we
Okay.
April 14th.
should have all the ducks in order.
April 14th.
April 14th?
What?
Pussy
We can put you at 7 on the 14th.
Okay.
John calls.
And I do also want to say, yes, the board does actually work. It's been very helpful, thank you.
All right. Anyone else before we continue? Yes, Historical Commission, I should say.
Hi, Bill. And Steve O'Donnell, Chairman of the Milton Historical Commission. As Chairman of the Historical Commission, I'm gratified to hear that discussions are underway to hopefully modify the original plans for this building. When the Commission discussed the originally proposed plan at its last meeting, we had very serious concerns. I'd like to share a little of the background of this property and the reasons for our concerns, tempering some of the Commission's views, I might add, as I understand that some of our issues are being addressed as part of these ongoing discussions. This house at 17 Canton Avenue is a federal-style wood clapboard dwelling built in 1831 by John Durrell. It's located within the Milton Hill National Register Historic District and serves as an introduction to that district as one enters the residential area from Milton Village along Canton Avenue. Mr. Durrell owned a general store in Milton Village. 45 or so years later, in 1875, Frederick Severance bought the house from the Durrell family. Mr. Severance was a carpenter and contractor with a shop located on the wharf in Milton, and is said to have employed as many as 75 people. A number of Milton houses have been documented as the work of his shop, so at least these first two owners were businessmen in the area as well as residents. The house remained in a single-family residential use until 1968, when it was converted to the DeWolf Real Estate Office building. Since that time, only minor changes were made to the exterior of the building. The addition of a new side entry, the conversion of the garage to office space, and the attachment of the garage to the building. Other than these two relatively small changes, the building has been essentially unchanged since the early 19th century and has been carefully maintained to respect the historical heritage. The proposal originally submitted to the board would have dramatically altered the building so that it no longer would be recognizable as anything other than a generic 21st century office building. The proposal clearly showed no respect for the historical nature of the building, the neighborhood, or the National Register Historic District of which it is a part and to which it is a continuing resource. That proposal could have been characterized as demolition by renovation. If any building should be saved, it is one such as this, which shows a bold presence in its location in the town, as well as in its detail, character, and proportion both within itself and in the context with other houses in the area. The Historical Commission was unanimously opposed to this project as originally proposed, and we would hope that the discussions currently ongoing would result in a project not only more acceptable and less intrusive to the neighbors, but also one which is respectful, not only in the terms of bulk and shape and footprint, but also in preservation of historical detail and the use of appropriate exterior materials, respectful of the history of the building, the historic district of which it is a part, and of the town. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. You want to, would you send a copy of that to Mr. Clark? Thanks. Anyone else want to be heard? Okay, we're going to continue this to April 14th at 7. And I think it's great that this is the way development should work.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Now we're going to go on to the 683, 685 Brush Hill Road definitive subdivision plan continued hearing. And we're only 15 minutes behind schedule because of the...
Very good.
Well, the same instructions. Introduce yourself, introduce the team, say why you're here, and make a presentation.
Good evening. I'm still Bob Sheffield. I'm an attorney, and I represent the developer of 683, 685 Brush Hill Road. With me tonight is Jim Burke of Sal Burke Associates, and also the developer Anthony Lucido from Milton. And in this case, we've worked with the neighbors. We have since our last meeting walked the property with John McDonald, particularly looking at the trees and trying to determine what trees could be retained and saved. We also reviewed the entrance location to the property, and as you will hear, our original suggestion about the location to the entrance should be retained insofar as it provides improved sight lines, a safer mode of entrance, and more closely a 90-degree angle coming into the to the roadway. I've also checked and found that most of the plows that plow the streets in town are 8 feet. And that question was raised at the meeting, and nobody had the answer to it. So an 18-foot roadway, for example, 2 plows could pass. Obviously, if all the street were not available, there would be, close together. But we don't use 10-foot plows in town, although on the highways they may be 10-foot blade. With that, I'd like to introduce Jim Burke, and he will go over the plan and the changes and update the board.
Thanks, Bob.
You can turn that a little more so that it's sort of equally observable by the people in the audience and by the board, except for Mr. Duffy, who is obscured.
Well, I've provided some 11 by 17s of what we're looking at tonight. And what is showing is field locations of large trees on the property. The trees that that are shown on that are flagged in the field. Walked the site with Mr. McDonald and discussed mostly about the entrance. And there's a cluster of cedars up by the large maple. If I can discuss the entrance real quickly, there are basically 4 trees that would warrant potential savings. The first one out front, and it's right underneath the catch basin, is a large oak, a 36-inch oak. It is in rough shape, in my opinion. The utility department used it as a guy pole. There's chains hanging off of it up high. There is an adjacent stump that's all rotted out. Mr. McDonald and I discussed the potentials of saving it. He talked about pruning literally, 24-inch limbs off of it and saving the very top canopy. With its location, with it being right in the right-of-way, if we move the roadway to where the existing drive is, certainly, potentially, we'd have to move the drainage and the like, and to save it, the town would be cutting that down in 10 years. In my opinion, you're better off losing that tree. That being said, as the roadway moves up with the construction of utilities, there are 2 pines further up, and you kind of see them, they're right in the right-of-way as well. Those are also, no matter what you do, those are gone. The one that can be saved, I think, is that 40-inch maple. Basically, it's a good, healthy tree. It's right on the edge of excavation. With that drainage right there, it may be at risk, but I think, that definitely does not need to be cut for construction. As you move up, there's a group of cedars right in front of on Lot 9, right in front of one of the conceptual homes. Very nice grouping of trees. It's on the saved location of the large beech tree. That group certainly can be saved with the proper siting of the home, along with the 60-inch maple, which was always proposed to be saved. Then there's a group of trees behind the 60-inch maple along a property line. Obviously, those can be saved as well. And as the roadway goes up, there's a significant amount of trees that can be saved on this particular development, and I know that that is an interest of the applicant. So,
Jim, is that a 120-inch beech?
Yes, it is.
Oh, yeah.
It's a monster.
Well, that's right. I recall seeing that.
That's a big beech.
That's honestly why we're
It's a
here.
big beech.
That's why it's called beech tree.
120 inch, I don't know how you measure that, right?
Yeah, it's a monster.
AKA
You'd say
10 feet.
10 feet. Yeah,
10 feet diameter.
10-foot tree. But, like I said, if and it's really kind of an update at this point. I'm sorry about the drafting. It's not really a real finished plan. These will be shown in the subdivision plan as part of the existing conditions plan. And, at this point, we've got a meeting with DPW scheduled for next week to go over the plans. They haven't had a chance to look at it yet. I talked to them about it, and I'm meeting with them on Wednesday. So I would imagine a lot of that, those issues, drainage, water supply, sewage, that will be flushed out. So I would imagine there'll be some revisions to the plans based on their review. So, any sort of comments that you may have at this point regarding the tree locations, I'd be glad to hear them.
Okay, Pete, what do you think?
I think it's very helpful to get these locations, and did you survey these in? So
Yes.
they're relatively
Yeah,
accurate?
field crew located them, and I took a look at, like I say, they're all flagged right now with orange flagging. I felt
Yeah.
if I put a spot of paint on them, people might not take it the right way. So,
They didn't think they were coming down.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you've got to overlay your grading plan on
It-
here.
and I took a look at the grading plan. Like I said, the ones that are obviously that can be saved is the nice trees are on the right side, and the road's swinging to the left. So we got lucky in that respect. I'd say the one thing that is unlucky is the maples up by the cul-de-sac. Just miss them. And it would have been nice to be able to get them inside that circle, but the layout's too tight, and we won't be able to move them.
What type of maples are they?
Excuse me?
Are they sugar maples?
Sugar maples.
Okay.
Well, it's good to have this, tree plan. I think that helps advance the consideration of the site, and I guess the rest will be kind of waiting to hear about DPW.
The fire department as well.
And the fire department.
Okay, why don't we hear from Mr. Curtis? What? From you first?
You have a letter in that I handed you tonight from the Board of Health.
What does it say?
Dave reviewed the project.
Yeah,
and
that's
they voted
kick 'em.
positively except
So I
for
can
the
kick 'em.
drainage, which they're leaving to the town.
All right. The Board of Health, of course, since the project is going to be changed, we may get an updated approval from them, but we can assume that the Board of Health is comfortable here because it's the sewer that they're concerned about.
And drainage.
And drainage.
And drainage.
And drainage, but they passed on the drainage to
All
the
right.
numbers to the DPW, or to the engineer.
Okay, we will see what the DPW says. Now, Mr. Kernan, why don't we hear from you? I don't see, where's Mr. McDonald? What's he up to?
I'm missing him.
Mr. McDonald is up to, who knows what, but he called me and asked me if I'd be sure to attend in his absence, and I said I'd be happy to. So
All right.
his smiling face will be here next time. As was mentioned, John did tour the property with the developers. I was not able to do so. The trees were flagged. I think, in our opinion, we've got some more work to talk about the driveway. There's a substantial change in the driveway layout as the developers are continuing to propose. We feel pretty strongly that we'd like to keep the first 60 feet of the driveway relatively intact as it is. For a number of reasons. I think it's going to make a huge visual impact off of Brush Hill Road that's not going to be favorable. So I would suggest that those conversations would continue. We'd meet with the developers and see if we can also meet with DPW and come up with some compromises and make something that's going to be a little more attractive and will work all the way around.
Okay, that's short.
Yeah, I mean,
To
it's
the
just,
point.
it's.
You want to keep talking.
We want to keep talking.
And we think that the our surrogates, are, in this case also, are capable. And we look forward to your, hopefully, having a meeting of the mind, because we prefer to have, our job is easier when we don't have to decide between competing proposals. So, keep working.
That we
We're
will.
thinking the 24th.
March?
Yeah. Is that 24th?
Yeah, that's fine. If I could just add with regards to, I mean, we have looked at this driveway location. I left the driveway on that plan for a reason, so you guys could kind of get a feel for it. The fact that if we stayed with this driveway and kind of hooked in hard this way.
Jim, excuse me, could you identify which line is the existing driveway on here?
Sure. It's just right in here.
This way. It's this faint one right here, yeah. all right.
It falls right
And the
around
new
the
one is
tree.
the new one's not the dark one, but yeah, it is the
Correct.
dark one.
Correct.
All right. Yeah.
You'll still have to put the drainage in.
Right.
So these are V8 Peltec chambers. They're 36 inches high and about 5 feet wide.
Yeah.
So and they're double. So you picture the excavation that's going to be required for 10 of these. You take that and you shift it this way, and that, in essence, the same trees are gone.
Well, except maybe the maple.
We're still hooking around to this side.
And the oak, I mean, if you bend the driveway, you don't have to necessarily bend it on the existing, but if you bend your new road somewhat, you might, in other words, sort of compromise your bin, not as much as they want, but more than you've got.
Well, hear me out for a second. You're going to end up biting into that row of cedars that we're basically not touching on that 60-foot buffer side. So on the left side, right now, we're leaving it alone. If we go with the driveway as it exists, we're going to have to cut in probably 20 feet to get that drainage in. Now, that being said, as far as site, I mean, and I guess it's all perception what you like, but as you come up, you have that whole site, I mean, Brush Hill Road. You have to come all the way up to this point, and you have to turn a full 90 degrees. And depending on how you dress up this entrance, we haven't done any sort of landscaping plans for that particular entrance. I'm just, thinking that a perpendicular entrance would be more presentable than the angle. Not only more presentable, but also safer. And that's something we can discuss.
Right, yeah, we gotta discuss, but that's why.
That's my sales pitch.
Right, well, Olmsted designed it, and he did it that way on purpose, with an eye to the aesthetics.
But there was no new house on lot 4 at the time he designed it.
So you didn't get quite.
But even still, the angle, I mean, he took into account the angle and the aesthetics, and that's, he ended up with a nice product, and all we're trying to do is try to keep that to the best we can.
All right.
That's my 2 cents worth of the.
Well, hopefully, my suggestion is you bend it a little bit and in an Olmsted-like manner.
Bend it like Beckham.
Do the best you can.
All right.
Mr. Duffy.
Can someone talk about the discussions with the owner of Lot 4 regarding access?
We talked to, I know there was a brief discussion at the end of the last meeting, and I discussed at the last hearing as well that I've quickly designed an 8% driveway that could provide access to the far corner into this location here, and that's pretty much all.
That I think is adequate. What do you think, Ed?
Just over here, Jim, like that?
Exactly right.
It's
130 feet long at 8%.
Is he happy with that?
Like I said, it has not been presented. I wasn't asked to do it.
Okay.
I just kind of did it on my own to make sure that something reasonable could be done. So something reasonable can be done.
The board expects something reasonable to be done there.
Like I say, it's a private matter.
I mean, they will be available.
Yes.
The deal is that the street will be available for a driveway if the owner wants to put a driveway through.
Correct.
Right.
Fine.
So that's you can't do more than that.
Right.
Nothing. Yeah, exactly right.
Thank you.
We certainly can design something. I can't make them build it.
Jim,
Okay.
Can you point out where his garage is in his new building?
It is right here.
With the doors?
The doors face this direction.
Oh, well, then that would work well with your driveway.
Yeah,
I was afraid these doors were on the other end and then your driveway wouldn't do them any good.
yeah. I knew where the doors were, so that location works well. You know what even work better is if you could extend it out further. But then you'd end up with an easement on this guy's lot.
Because we will be loath to let them break through that stone wall out on Brush Hill Road, so I think that would be a good solution for him.
Yeah. What else?
I guess one more thing I would say about this entrance location. It's a tough problem. I think, you would have to go quite a bit to the left on this. I don't know where north is on this. North, so that's to get and save those trees.
Yeah.
Even if you could modify the drainage, when it was designed as a driveway for a single home, the design criteria are quite a bit different. And really, for safety, a 90-degree approach so that there's a safe, being able to look to the left where there is traffic coming around the curve there. So you need good sight lines to make safe entry in and out. And with 5 homes, it's a lot different than a single-family home. So I don't immediately see a solution unless we move the driveway 100 feet. And even that, then we're sacrificing more trees that way. So it's going to be a tough one. I encourage you to blow this up to 10
Well-
scale or 20 scale and look at it in more detail, but.
I think if we got someone with, your expertise, Pete, to dress it up a little bit, I think the neighbors
I
would
guess
be
that's the other thing, is to build a beautiful entrance that
And that's our
presents
intent.
presents itself with some character.
And
that
the
reflects
landscape
neighborhood.
plan might be, as he points out, the landscape plan might go
Might
a
help
long
that
way.
in that entrance.
Understood.
You said there was a row of cedars on the left-hand side, which is
Not a
not...
row, more of a group.
A grouping?
Yeah,
Okay.
the 24
Oh, no,
versus-
sorry, I thought you meant closer to the entrance. There's
No,
not
no,
a
no.
group. Okay.
About
Well,
67
that,
feet up.
that's all in here.
Okay.
It's more like pines and cedars and this, and that was one of the original concerns with the neighborhood, was saving
Was to
that
keep
buffer.
those. I was just thinking, one of the things that, there they are. I didn't see them marked on here, if you want. I was thinking one of the things that might possibly soften that 90-degree angle, depending on how it could work, is even an alley of trees. You could plant an alley of trees. That might give it a little bit of softness, but I would defer to the landscape architect on
Yeah,
that one.
I've dabbled, but
I just remember there's an alley near Brookwood Farm that's quite attractive, and that might be something that could soften the line, but I would defer to Pete or any other landscape architect.
Olmsted liked LA.
He does, he also liked those
LA.
picturesque curving lines. We could trade one for the other.
if you have a chance to drive by and take a look at that first 36-inch oak, you can get a feel for.
All right, well,
Definitely.
Okay.
I'm sure that you will, in consulting with the neighborhood,
Yes.
come up with something that's reasonably acceptable to everyone.
Sounds like a plan.
And that's a good standard, reasonably acceptable. Who else wants to be heard? You come right up where Tim was, and
Good evening. My name is Paul Andriani. I own the lot at 671 Brush Hill Road. And I just wanted to take a moment to inform the planning board that today I talked to the engineer about developing a driveway on my property. And that would require an opening on the wall at Brush Hill Road. And we also arrived at a decision that the best way to put the driveway in, based on the position of the lot and the position of the house, would be a driveway that would parallel right next to the road that's proposed by the Rusitos. The reason I'm doing this is that I can't allow a situation to occur where I wouldn't have access to my house. And I am concerned that that may occur if this goes forward. I've made 3 or 4 calls to the Rusitos to sit down and discuss this situation, and the only response we've gotten is from their lawyer contacting my lawyer, and his response was that if I wanted to solve the situation, I would have had to bring the town sewerage all the way up Brush Hill Road to the lot. The cost of that would have been excessive for me. And they, at that time, didn't even own the land. So what they were proposing was that I spend the money, but they wouldn't have been able to fulfill their promise unless they actually bought the land. So I found both of those things totally unacceptable. And since then, we haven't been able to talk at all. So I'm just going forward with these plans just to make sure that I'm not going to be in a situation where I won't be able to access my property. And I know that's not in the benefit of the town, of the road, the residents, myself, everyone. So I just came here to make that statement tonight.
yes.
Mr. Andriani, where are you saying that your engineer today wants to put the driveway?
Can you point it?
Put
Yes,
them
I
up
can.
here.
And the reason it has to go here is because there's a septic system here. We designed it in such a way that we left a portion of the lot open that we could drive around it. And the road would go straight up here and into the driveway here. So it would, I don't know if everyone can see it. But go right up here and into here. The only other alternative would be to go around this way, which is not really acceptable.
What is, show us how you think the driveway could go.
It really, I mean, it can go just about anywhere. I mean, right now, the lot fronts on Brush Hill Road. It has no rights to cross over.
Right,
So-
but it eventually will have frontage in this, or it'll have,
You know, it would make sense to go, proceed out back and tie into the lot line, the rear lot line by lot 4. That's it gives you, you know, it's a steep grade, 8%, but certainly manageable. But that's the direction I would go.
and what you understand that, what he's talking about, you go in on the lot line between basically lot 9 and lot 4, down to the road.
So
And then
basically, it would
you,
be coming up like this and then going back down like this?
Yeah, would you tilt that around a little so we can see it, please?
It doesn't have to cross
You would
line.
enter the new road.
It just goes
You
straight
would
out.
enter the new road,
Right.
and
Right there.
then your driveway would go to the right off
well, it
to where
would be
your
up
garage goes.
basically
Well, I'm
here.
not quite
and-
sure
But the
why
point
it
is,
wouldn't
you
be
just
able
have
to
to
go
cross
directly in, but
It ends up being a grade issue. You have, there's I want to say, a 6-foot cut right at your house. So, and your driveway, your garage doors face, you know, to the rear. You have a turn radius, you're gonna need at least 12 feet to turn into your driveway. And I would recommend something larger than that to make it a little bit easier. Because the tighter in you bring it into your house, the steeper it's gonna be. Because the road has to be at a certain grade, and we're gonna be discussing that at the DPW meeting next week.
See,
But you're still at a cut.
But I am not here to discuss how the driveway could connect to the road. I'm here to express my concern that I will need to have another access to this property because I'm not confident, because I don't know what is expected of me from the constructor. And I just need to ensure myself that I will always be able to access my house, as will my family, and potentially even the contractors if we're still building.
Well, it's going to be a public road, and you're going to have frontage on the public road, and the question is, having your engineer looking at the proposed public road and to determine whether or not you can have a driveway, because as a public road, no one's going to cut off your access to it
At any point in time,
at any point in time.
Well, it's not a public
even
road
before
right
it
now.
becomes
But
a
it will
public
be,
road.
it's proposed
Well,
to be
it's
a
subject to
public
town
road.
meeting approval.
But in that period of time between when it becomes a public road,
That's right.
who would have the right to determine whether I could have access to it or not?
Probably the present owners by some deed, some easement they
But
give to you.
that's what I'm talking about.
Well, I
Is
mean,
that
they're
from-
not going to build this for a number of months, yes.
So your proposed driveway is, abuts their proposed road,
It would be
correct?
right next to it.
Can we actually approve curb cuts that close together, or can the DPW approve curb cuts that close together? I thought there was. a
Well, the
distance
opening on the
between-
wall wouldn't be right next to it, it would be farther up, I would assume it's somewhere around
Yeah, it's
here.
a select one. I think it's 100 feet. I think.
Yeah, I thought there was a distance in between. Okay, so your opening would be further down, and then it would swing up.
Yes, it
and
would
around to
turn
the house.
around like
Okay,
this and come
all
up
right,
this
I
way.
misunderstood where your opening was.
Have
So
you
that
built
would be
it?
one consideration is.
The other
distance in between.
consideration would be to come around this way,
Yeah.
which is a lot longer.
Have you built your septic system yet?
Yes, we have.
And might
And
you
we've
have to
designed
hook
it
up
in
to
such a
sewer
way
and
that we left the space open
Okay.
purposely.
Where's the septic system?
Right in the front.
It's in this area in here. I had the engineer design it on taking that into consideration.
So when they put the sewerage in, is the Board of Health going to make you hook up to sewer?
Eventually, if I need to, when I sell the house, I've already made arrangements for
Do you have an
that.
occupancy permit yet for the building?
No, we don't have an occupancy permit yet. But we've also put in a line directly from the basement to the road, just in case we ever have to hook up to town sewerage.
But
You might have to hook
might
up
have
to
to pump it.
the sewage that's going up that new road.
Yeah, you might have to pump it out.
You won't have to hook up until,
Till I
Stan
sell.
Ryan's right. If
Yeah.
he sells the house.
Right.
But he's got a perfectly good septic that's good for 20 years, so
That's right.
as long as he's there, he can use it.
Mhm.
Well, the way this is headed, you're gonna have a right of access off that new road.
According to the plan
According to the plan that we're
that they've
looking at
got here.
now.
I understand that. It's, my concern is between when it becomes a public road, who allows me access to that road? And as I said, my concern right now, and I'm not taking anything as being positive, I'm always assuming the negative. And
You
if the
wanna know
positive
how to
occurs,
get-
all the better, but
You want to know how to get to your house and before the road is built.
before it becomes a public road.
Well, and before it's built.
Right.
I mean, you're going to be moving into your house well before they start construction of a road. And so
Right.
you're going to want to get permission from the owner to continue to use the driveway
That's,
so that you don't have to cut through the wall on Brush Hill Road.
mhm.
And I think that that makes sense.
So I'm just bringing up, I'm just letting you know that I may be putting in an application for that reason, and I'm just explaining it to you all now so that you understand why I'm doing it. And it's not my preference, and I don't think it's any of the neighbors' preference, but I have to do it because if at a certain point I need to be able to open the wall, I can't wait 2 or 3 months to get approval to do it either.
How are you accessing the house now through the current driveway?
Well, right now the road goes right through my property, so I
Right.
think I have a right to use it.
So you don't have a formal agreement?
No, we don't. But it does go right through my property.
No, I totally understand that. I
Yeah.
can see that. I remember seeing that. I was just wondering if there was a formal
And
agreement.
when you
or
bought the
not.
property, there's nothing referenced in the deed, because you didn't
No,
know
there
what was
isn't.
going on up above.
No, there isn't.
All right, well, the neighbors are going to want to avoid a hole in the wall. And so put that on your agenda, Tim.
Oh, it's on it, don't worry about it.
Okay.
Anyway, thank you very much.
Okay, well,
I appreciate the time. My concern was just letting you know, if you heard about me doing this, why I was doing it.
I think we understand your issue. Yes.
Hi, I'm Anthony Rosito, part of the development team. I just wanted to say that as far as Dr. Adriani is concerned, we are willing to do something for access with them. We have said that. I didn't think that it was the place to talk about it because it's a private matter, but since my honesty is being in question here as far as being able to talk with him, you folks asked me to talk to him. He said we didn't talk. We actually spoke this week over text message a few times, back and forth. I actually saved the text, so I do have them. So we have been talking. Dr. Adriani was sick this week. He had the flu, so I was reluctant to meet with him, and that's why we didn't actually sit down in person. That's what's going on. And with all due respect, I mean, Dr. Adriani bought a lot. I don't think it's my problem or the owner's problem to give him access with it.
No, but we want to keep the wall.
Oh, no, absolutely, absolutely, and it will, and I've said it a million
Okay,
times,
and
and my
we're-
word is, well, it will happen.
I don't think anyone is.
Well, my credibility with the board is very
impugning
important.
your credibility or anything else.
Okay, I
And
just want to
certainly,
say.
we think that you're doing a nice job in approaching this, and continue your good work.
Well, thank you, that's all.
We're going to continue this to the 24th. And we now do so.
No, I
At
think
what
they
time?
wanted to go, you wanted to go to the next meeting, right? Or no?
Oh.
No, that was
No,
Kansas.
24th is okay. I mean, if we have, if I can
yeah.
get DPW on
The
board.
24th, and you know, we can always continue it then. Let's shoot for the 24th.
I don't want to get behind the 17 Canton Ave, no.
Yeah, that's the one. I was confused.
What time?
Or
8
131
o'clock?
Elliott.
What are we doing on the 24th, Bill?
7 o'clock, 131 Elliott.
And I can understand how you don't want to go to April 14th. It's too long. Okay.
So 8 on the 24th or 7:30? I suspect 131 Elliott's going to take longer than half an hour.
Well, depending. Let's do it at 7:45.
7:45, okay.
All right, continue to 7:45 on the 24th. We have heard the town planner's report. What else do we have?
Did we sign the amendment special permit?
No, it hasn't been amended. We're going to do that next week, hopefully. I have to write that down. Yeah.
Oh. I did not know that. Well, I didn't know if that was said or not.
What are we doing on the 10th, Bill?
Too much. Another
campaign.
We had a campaign last year.
You haven't heard?
Oh, wait, Bill, what time did
Yep.
you do what time are you gonna do
And you're
the
supposed to be retired and enjoying life.
hearing for the ATM on the 24th?
How are you feeling after your
6:45?
I'm better, Bob, but
The public hearing on the
Sorry,
article
Alice.
for the annual town meeting on the 24th, which is also
we're
happening.
knocking on doors.
6:45.
Leaf moving now.
So we don't have anything on the agenda for
Bill,
the
is this the
It's good,
original
because the attic was
of
better.
his stuff?
So I'm still
And
in
you want
third.
to stay
This-
there.
Yeah, I'm still in third.
Oh, you've got one, okay. And so there you gave us two?
Right? So the entire town is listening to you.
It was such a different scholarship.
All right.
Maybe you can say a wild card.
We're going to entertain a motion.
I do have a question first.
Yeah.
I'll let Pete ask his question.
Looks like we don't have anything on our agenda for the 10th.
Good.
We do, we have 88
You're
Ward.
gone, aren't you?
Alex just said.
That's what I was thinking.
We're going to sign 88 more. But we may push that.
We were supposed to sign 216 Pleasant Street also, but now there's an appeal, so.
Oh, okay.
Why do we sign 88 warrants at 88 warrants?
What we can do is,
Sign 88 warrants.
that works out. What we're going to do is, we're going to have this meeting tentatively scheduled but we may cancel it. For the 10th.
Okay, so we're
Okay, and Bill, you can work on that. Now we will entertain a motion.
I would like to move that we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. We're adjourned.